Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Future of XYZ. Today we have Judy Moon. Judy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks so much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. We're talking about something today that is so important and so relevant to the world we're currently living in, perhaps more than ever, which is the future of the cloud. You obviously, and I'll let you talk about your current company throughout the course of this, but you're the Senior Vice President of Sales at EVRYTHNG. You have a long history in tech, let's just call it, across many companies. And you started your career as a D2C marketer in the media and entertainment space. So you've certainly seen a major transition in technology over the course of your career. And so I'm looking forward to diving into this.
Thanks, so am I.
So let's just start with the basic, and we're going to be talking about the future of the cloud. So what is the cloud?
So the cloud, on a very high level, is the ability to, there are a bunch of servers in the cloud, but that allows for different kinds of platforms to be built. That's off-premise, so everything kind of sits in a cloud. And when we think about cloud, we think of AWS, Microsoft Azure, and so forth, right? But all those servers are then being used by different companies like EVRYTHNG in order to build out different types of platform that can fill certain needs.
That's great. And AWS, of course, being Amazon Web Services, there are a couple of, as you mentioned, key players in this space who have built out what we'll consider hardware that supports everyone else. And when we think about the cloud, it's called the cloud because it lives somewhere up here, as we keep referring to, right? It's in the ether.
Right.
What does the future, what is the present and what is the future, and maybe a little short history lesson of how the cloud has evolved and where you think it's going?
Well, let's see. I don't know how big of a history lesson I could give, but certainly I can talk about when the internet exploded, right? This idea of things being connected through the internet, all of that is being done in the cloud. That was a major disruption in so many aspects of our lives, and also for businesses and in different industries. Today and going forward, I think especially in light of what's taking place during COVID, we all saw the need for us to look at how we do things differently. And I think this is where technology, and especially cloud technology, was really helped businesses and people to live differently during COVID, right? Like people working remotely, children learning from home, colleagues connecting with each other, through Zoom calls and whatnot. So I think that in some ways the future is here regarding the cloud technology, but I think a lot of businesses have recognized that systems and different parts of their businesses need to move into the cloud in order to set up systems that are resilient to unpredictability and disruption, right? So I think we've just been, all businesses during COVID have really seen this need to move most parts of their businesses into the cloud.
I think what's interesting about speaking about disruption, which is of course what COVID has done to our world, or has been an example of, is the unpredictability of our future state and our reliance. Frankly, we need the cloud, and companies are recognizing they need to move to the cloud because of the complexity, because of the potential for continuous disruption. So how does the cloud enable companies to behave differently? And if we want to talk about EVRYTHNG, which of course, as a Fast Company 2020 winner of game-changing, world-changing ideas, I think it's really important to talk about what you guys are doing, perhaps, and some of the other things you're seeing in the world that really are helping, I guess, buffer against this disruption.
So just to put a little context to your question here. So when you think about different cloud platforms that exist already and have existed for a little bit, when you think about a platform for information about a brand's customers, for example, we think about a CRM system. We think about like a Salesforce. when we think about content, marketing is thinking about content, then we think about possibly Adobe as a sort of cloud system where all that content is being managed and created. You know, on the sort of enterprise side, there's SAP for as an ERP system. All these systems are living in the cloud. Now we're talking about what everything is a cloud platform for consumer products. So what I mean by that is it's a platform that will create digital twins of passive physical objects or things or products in the platform, and be able to aggregate and manage and capture all data about those products. At the same time, once the products are digitized, and we hope that this is done at a very early stage in the product life cycle, so like at point of manufacture, then we are able to then track and trace those products and along the entire life journey in a cloud setting, right? So when you think about physical products, let's say product manufacturer is producing a number, you know, let's say they're producing candy bars, right? They're physical things in a specific facility. They move along the supply chain, they go into stores, and consumers are, you know, consuming them. Well, all of that journey is also then replicated in the cloud, in the platform. So from a consumer products manufacturing perspective, they can have full visibility into what is happening with their products, as well as how consumers are engaging with them.
It's interesting because I mean, there are a couple of things that come to mind, obviously, with my own background, both in apparel and fashion, as well as, I mean, technology and most importantly, consumer packaged goods. I mean, there are a number of aspects here. What you're talking about is life cycle management. So from the raw materials all the way to the finished product, to the delivery, and then to the consumer experience and utilization. So if you're talking about washing machines, I know you guys are dealing in consumer, you know, products, but as a durable good, a washing machine has a much longer life cycle than say, for instance, a candy bar. So can this technology with that digital twin, it can actually foresee the lifespan of this washing machine?
Well, I'm not sure about foreseeing. It doesn't have that sort of future-looking capability, but what it can do is track and trace that product, whether it's a candy bar or a jacket, or whether it's a washing machine. It really doesn't matter what that physical item is. We can, as long as we can put some sort of digital tag or a trigger on the product, we can capture that product's journey along the life cycle, and it could last maybe 5 years, or it could just be something that's consumed right away. And
is this, how is this different than blockchain, or is it using blockchain technology as part of the platform?
So blockchain is something that we also support. If you think about blockchain, it's immutable, right? It's one of the reasons why a company may be interested in working with blockchain. We have what's called the Blockchain Integration Hub. So we can integrate with a blockchain provider, and in fact have partnerships with 6 different blockchain companies. Blockchain is just one way to track and trace or authenticate products, right? And it's certainly not relevant for all product manufacturers out there. Perhaps it makes more sense for more of the luxury goods items. Right. But it's an option, and we can connect to blockchain as well. But the difference here, though, is that if the product cloud is tracking and tracing the journey of the product or the data around that journey, the brand owns that data. This, we're a platform as a license, so the brand has full visibility into the data. They own it, and they can also move that data. Whereas in a blockchain, it's there. It's stuck. You can't move it, right? And you're right, and you're stuck with that specific blockchain provider that you're working with.
That's really interesting. And I think, you just mentioned something, it's a paid license for a platform. There are a lot of terminologies. I mean, you talked about ERP earlier as for SAP, and, we throw out these terms, or I can't say I do, but you're a salesperson in tech force, you're throwing out terms. I mean, there are terms like SaaS, which is two small A's, big S for anyone listening who doesn't already know what it is, which is, of course, software as a service, which is like Gmail at its most basic, but you just mentioned PaaS, which is platform as a service. Is that how you guys see yourself at everything? And what is kind of the integration of these things with cloud or the relationship?
Well, so the product cloud we work with Amazon AWS. That's where our current servers come from. Certainly, we could also work with Microsoft and use their Azure, servers as well. So, at the base level, the both Amazon and Microsoft, they provide servers that can be utilized by companies like EVRYTHNG to build platform in the cloud using their servers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very interesting. What's also interesting, I think, is the applications.
Right.
So, I think the cloud gets thrown around a lot. And for those of us, who operate vaguely within the tech sphere, right, we kind of have an understanding, and we think of server farms, and we think of data management, and we think about, kind of this zeros and ones, if you will. And I had a guest on talking about, data integration a month or so ago, and talking about cloud theory mathematics is in fact the way that we're going to solve for this challenge. So there's lots of tech in this. For the layman, how is this all related to the everyday, and how is the future of the cloud going to impact us in our daily lives?
Thank you so much for that question. It's a really great one. And sometimes for those of us who work on the tech side, we get so involved with the tech, we don't always, discuss the application. So that's a really great point. So if I could just put it in really simple, basic terms, at the base level, there are these servers. Next, you have these platforms that are built on top of these servers or using these servers. And on top of the platform, then you have all different kinds of applications that can be built. So for us, we digitize products, right? We connect the physical to the digital, and you're asking, so what, right? Well, the so what is that then we can actually, the digital twins participate in this ecosystem in order to solve some complex problems. So what are some of these problems that we could solve? Supply chain transparency is a problem we could help solve. And as we saw during COVID and continue to see, the lack of visibility along the supply chain is hugely problematic. And part of that is because actually the supply chain is fragmented, right? And we're doing some critical work to try to defragment, if that's a word, the supply chain. And so the platform was built to be interoperable and to use a common language that the industry will use. And we were on the forefront. In fact, just yesterday, we announced that the work that our CTO, Don Guinard, has been doing with GS1 around the new standard called EPCIS 2.0. It's a new supply chain standard that has moved to community review. And
what does that mean exactly?
It means, I think, that the members, it's open to the public review, and we expect it to be ratified. And once it's ratified, the implication of that means that we have this new global standard where that would allow different systems along the supply chain to be able to talk to each other in a common language. So right now, as I said, supply chain is really fragmented, but when we get to the point where everybody's using the same standard, then local systems can speak to another system, and everything can actually speak to the cloud platform like EVRYTHNG. And we wouldn't be, I'm not saying we would be the only option here, right? But there would be platforms like ours in the cloud that can actually connect with the different systems that exist along the supply chain. So, maybe it's like connecting with the factory system, right? Or data management system, or whatever those systems are, as the products are moving along the journey. And all that data then would be aggregated under a single platform, giving a holistic view to the brand of where their products are. If there's a shipment missing somewhere, then they'll know that, right? Because they're having a single view of things.
Boxes of candy bars and sneakers don't fall off trucks anymore.
Right. Right. But there are ships right now stuck with, crates and crates of goods sitting somewhere in some ocean. You know what I mean? Right now, there's the supply chain is a bit of a mess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, coming back to the disruption that we've experienced through COVID, the supply chain and the interconnectedness of our global supply chains, right? I
Yeah.
think is so important for understanding. And I think that's where the cloud, perhaps, I mean, obviously everything is what you're saying, not your company, everything, but everything in the world is beginning to kind of float and live in the cloud.
Yes.
But in real life on planet Earth, the average person doesn't understand necessarily the complexity of these systems. So
Yeah.
the cloud helps all of us on our daily basis not have to think about the complexity in the world, it seems like.
Yeah. So let me actually touch on that. So how does it affect the average person in the street? How does it affect you and me or every other consumer out there? Well, here's some ways that it could actually impact our lives. When we have access to supply chain data, we can help authenticate products. So, everybody knows that counterfeiting is a massive issue for most brands across different vertical markets. So if you can track and trace your products along the product life cycle, you can see when diversion activity is happening. You can see when there's counterfeited activity happening, right? So on a very, that impacts consumers, so that consumers are not, they can actually purchase, for example, Ralph Lauren shirt, scan the code that we helped to put on there and authenticate that that's actually a real Ralph Lauren shirt that they've paid for and not a fake item, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of from a brand integrity perspective. And then in terms of engaging with consumers, now consumers have the ability to scan codes on products and be able to get authentication validation or data that shows that the product is what it says it is, right? So provenance information about that piece of smoked salmon that you might be wanting to purchase. You can get all kinds of information, or maybe that shirt wasn't made from cotton that came from a certain, part of China, et cetera, right? So all that data that we ingest into the platform, we can surface that to the consumer for sustainability purposes. It could be recycling information. It could be about digitally delivering content that would have taken, multiple hang tags on a product that gets thrown away, right? Reduce waste as well as cost. So there are a number of different ways that consumers also benefit from this technology.
So let's go back to the consumer interaction with the technology. Besides the, we're talking at this point about, kind of supply chain side and delivery mechanism versus, my Gmail, my, Google Drive lives in the cloud. So the average consumer may also be interacting with it in that sense, but like at the finished goods side and this traceability and trackability, as you're talking about, I mean, something that's very interesting, obviously sustainability is a big piece of this, and it's increasingly important to understand both your impact on the planet, but also the people who are producing and delivering. As you said, where does the coffee come from in China, for instance? But I think one of the things that's very interesting to me is like, what else? What else is coming down the pipeline for us? And you talked before about apps. And so consumers are becoming more accustomed to looking at apps. Almost every brand has its own branded app as a mechanism for delivering personalized coupons, storytelling, et cetera. And that's more the world that I play in, Judy. Apps, for instance, use an API in order to build and to use your model of the cloud to build. Obviously, they build in the cloud, but they build an API that connects what they've built in the cloud to your platform. Is that fair and accurate?
Yeah. So actually, let me clarify what I mean by applications. I'm talking about solutions that not necessarily native applications that, for example, that you download on your phone and use. I'm talking more about sort of the solution applications that we build on top of the platform. Now, consumer engagement, as you and I both know, you don't necessarily need to download a native app in order to scan QR codes, right? And that's what's so great about the acceleration of the use of QR codes during COVID is now everybody knows what a QR code is. And so for consumers, there are so little barriers now to getting really interesting information about the products that they are looking to purchase or have purchased. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, no, it's totally useful and helpful because I think it's right. But to the point of the app, the consumer-facing
Sure.
app, there is also an opportunity for all this information to be delivered and tailored directly to a particular consumer.
Right. Yes. Yes. And so, yes, apps can also be built using API and SDKs connected to the platform.
Very interesting. So as we wrap up, Judy, I think one question I have is, so it feels very much like the future of the cloud is right now. What is what else would you love people who are listening, whether they're techie or not techie, to know about, the future of the cloud, maybe some hopeful things that it can solve, but also some watch outs and challenges that you're foreseeing?
So I think that this technology is really great for consumers, because consumers now will have so much more information about the products that they choose to purchase and the companies they choose to support, especially when we think about some of the sustainability challenges facing us. And lots of research shows that consumers really care about working with, aligning with brands whose missions align with theirs. But it's not just enough, I believe, for a brand to make assertions and claims. I think that we need to be able to validate those claims, and this technology will really help us to do that, right? Is that shirt really made without cotton from a specific part of China? You know what I mean? And is that seafood really, was it caught without slave labor? I mean, there are lots of, things that we're all concerned about as human beings, and technology can help us to hold people accountable, right? Companies accountable to some of the goals that they have going into the future. So that's super exciting. Challenges, people always ask about data privacy. It's an absolutely critical concern. We are a highly secure platform, and we're ISO certified, and we ensure that we follow all the data privacy laws. And so this is something that everybody, I think, across the board in any kind of platform or app we use, that is of a concern. But we, in our company, we absolutely do everything within our power to make sure that we are secure and that we don't violate any privacy laws.
And which is awesome. But as we think about like the future of the cloud, obviously there are nefarious players who are also using the cloud for what we will call nefarious activities. So I think that data privacy swings both ways, and being able to be held accountable across all these different factors, as you're describing, is really, we hope that it is used for good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Judy, thank you so much for this really interesting discussion. It's kind of like a primer on the cloud. It feels like just the tip of the very, 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 very big iceberg. But thank you for joining us today on Future of XYZ.
Thanks, Lisa. I enjoyed it.
And everyone listening, to subscribe to Future of XYZ for other interesting conversations similar to the future of the cloud. Please make sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. They are housed in the cloud as well. And make sure that you follow Future of XYZ on Instagram, or visit future-of.xyz to learn more about LVG & Co., or to nominate a future guest. So thanks again, Judy. We look forward, everyone else, to seeing you next week.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.